send the password again to something. A lot of
Yeah,
people.
it has to be capital JGU.
Yeah. Oh, he's joined.
Good morning.
Good morning, Sir Richard. Good morning to you. I'm just thanking
No,
connecting
sound
us.
is not on. Let's have the sound. Mute.
So no, we can hear you. We can't
We
see
can hear you.
Oh, there you go. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Sound. Mute. Wait a minute.
No,
So we can hear you clearly.
It's all good, Sir Richard.
Can you hear us?
Oh. Maybe that's the problem.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you hear us, Sir Richard?
You might need to call him and walk him through.
We can hear you, but he can't hear us. So we send a chat message.
Yeah, we hear it now.
No, he can't hear us.
Oh, he can't hear us. Yeah.
I mean, this has to be his computer.
No, we won't have a dialogue if he can't hear us.
So there is an issue from his side.
Yeah, is there anyone to help?
Minor technical issue. My name is Ankit Malhotra. I'm a alumnus of the OP General Global University, and I'm reading my LLM at the School of Oriental and African Studies as the Felix Scholar. I have been a long-standing admirer of Cornelius Rabji, and I found this fascinating book in the Institute for Advanced Legal Studies on Cornelius Rabji. That's her. And there's also a bust of hers in the Lincoln's Inn. Now I took the liberty of writing an email to the author of at least this book, Sir Richard Surabji, and within a fortnight's time, I had received a response inviting me for lunch to Wolfson College in Oxford. The conversation ensued, and now here we are with Sir Richard Surabji, who's going to now talk to us about a topic which he has devoted his life to, and to carry the discussion forward and also the conversation. I now invite Professor Dean Sudarshan, who is a long-standing mentor of mine, and also can talk about anything from politics to philosophy to poetry. And I'm so grateful for the association that he has with the university and also with me. Dean Sudarshan, the floor is now yours.
Thank you, Ankit. I hope Richard can hear through your telephone. This is remarkable. This is very, very auspicious that at the commencement of the spring semester, the first distinguished public lecture in our university is to be delivered by Sir Richard Sorabji. And we are deeply honored and grateful that he's made the time for us. And we are also keen to hear him speak on the topic that he suggested, which is the Stoics and justice and togetherness or belonging. We have in our faculty Ramin Jahanbeglu, who published a book on his conversations with Sir Richard. And Ramin has also set up a center for the Mahatma Gandhi Center for Peace in our university. We also have, under the leadership of the Vice Dean of the School of Government and Public Policy, Naresh Singh, who's joined us, a Center for Complexity Economics. That's one part of it. But there's another part to it. It's called Applied Spirituality and Public Policy. So we will be able to make connections to all of this. I'm sure listening to Sir Richard Sorabji, those of you who did not read his biography that was circulated with the announcement of this lecture, he is the world's most outstanding scholar of Greek philosophy, in particular Aristotle, but of course the Stoics, which he's going to talk about. His project, Commentators on Aristotle and the Greeks, is possibly the largest ambitious philosophy venture that's ever been undertaken. I think 117 volumes have already been published by different authors, and you can just imagine the energy, the attention to detail, all that would take to reach that, to achieve this goal, and it's still an ongoing project. And I think it's remarkable that Sir Richard is, at the helm of it, directing it. It will be an invaluable contribution to the world of scholarship forever. So I just wanted to mention these two things, that, there's a connection between the Stoics and Mahatma Gandhi that he has elucidated very clearly. And I hope our students will read that essay and interviews with him on the subject of Gandhi. And it's also important, I think, for the students who are both on Zoom as well as, I think, on YouTube, that they will get something to enable them to work and study well, because I think the Stoics will have some lessons on how they might deal with their anxieties and their emotions. And instead of bothering the student counselor, I think they could well benefit with a bit of Stoic understanding. So with those words, I wish to welcome Sir Richard to deliver his lecture, and also do that. I'm doing that on behalf of the Vice Chancellor of our university, who narrowly missed meeting you, Sir Richard, when he was in Oxford not long ago. So over to you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Should I pull up the slide, sir, or?
You can do without the phone now, no?
Now, do I stay on the phone?
No, you don't need to stay on the phone, because we can hear you well.
I stay on the phone.
So,
No,
I mean, we don't, at least now we don't. And then when we have to come back for questions, then I'll call you back. I'll call you back. So we don't need you on phone right now.
We can hear you.
I put down the phone.
Yes, please.
Put down the phone.
Sir, sir. Yes.
Ankit, maybe you have to tell him
Yeah.
to start speaking because we can hear him well.
Richard Sarabji. Yes, hello.
He has to unmute.
Now, hello. I'm just checking. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
We can hear you. And after you finish the lecture, we'll come back to you via telephone for some questions and a discussion, if that's all right with you.
Using the telephone, it's not working properly. Okay. Now, I must just find my place. I was going to talk about a philosopher. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. All right. I was going to talk about a Greek philosopher of the 2nd century of our era. There's a terrible echo. Have you got an echo?
No, we can hear you clearly.
It's all right. Okay. I'm going to talk about a philosopher.
But should he not be off the phone?
Somebody has cleared.
Sir, you can continue speaking. Can hear you clearly. You can keep the phone down.
And
Well,
you can put the phone down, Sir Richard, and carry on speaking.
Let's see. Now, you can hear?
yes, yes.
I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
Tell him it doesn't matter that he can't hear us. We want to hear him.
I can't hear you on the. Oh, okay, okay. I'm going to talk about good morning. Good morning. Good. So we can now hear each other, I hope. I'm going to talk about a Greek, ancient Greek Stoic philosopher of the 2nd century of our era. He belonged to the Stoic school, and his name was Hierocles. He wrote a work called Elements of Ethics. It exists in 2 places, one on papyrus and one in recorded in an anthology, an ancient anthology of philosophical works. And the idea that I'll concentrate on is called in Greek oichiosis, but I'll explain what that Greek word means. uh, Heracles' idea was that there was a set of circles. I don't know whether it helps if I show you my little diagram here, but on this diagram, we've got the self in the middle, the smallest circle, and then one's family. Next out is one's friends, then the general community, then the whole of humanity, and then all the creatures of the earth. Now, the idea that was being expressed in Greek spoke of a process called oichiosis, of that's a process of thinking in your mind of other beings as being related to you, related by this belonging to each other. It's a process of recognizing the belongingness of different beings to each other. It's viewed as a series of circles. In the middle is one's mind, and then the next circle out is one's body, and then the next circle out is one's close family, then further family, then one's what the Greeks call a deme. That's a sort of small little area of people living near you. Then your tribe. We mustn't think of Red Indian tribes or wild tribes. The ancient Athenians divided themselves up into tribes. And then citizens of Athens, for example. And the whole town, which included not only citizens, but also non-citizens. And then the race, is the race Greek, or is it non-Greek? And then the human race. Now, these are starting from very close relations, going to more distant relations. But it's a duty to reduce the sense of distance. There's a duty on people to draw these circles inwards and bring them closer to you. The closest, or almost the closest, relationship is that of parents' affection for offspring, which is a natural affection. It's found even in animals. And indeed, the sense of kinship among humans is natural. Now I think I should read out the translation that I have here. I hope you've seen a diagram with the series of circles on it. Yes, good, you have. So let me now read the translation. This is from the Stoic philosopher of the 2nd century of our era. His name is Heracles. In general, he says, in general, each of us is, as it were, circumscribed by many circles, some smaller, some bigger, and some enclosing and others enclosed, according to the different and unequal relationships towards one another. The first and most intimate circle is that which someone has drawn as though round a center point, his own mind. In this circle are enclosed both the body and those things adopted for the sake of the body. For this circle is more or less the smallest and practically in contact with the center. Second, after this, and more removed from the center, and enclosing the first, is that in which parents, siblings, wife, and children are placed. The third is that in which are placed uncles and aunts, both grandfathers and grandmothers, the children of one's relations. Next to this is the circle of one's members of one's own deme. That was the smallest community that the ancient Greek Athenians recognized where one lived. And next, the circle of one's tribesmen, then that of one's fellow citizens, and moreover, in the same way, that of one's fellow townsmen, and then those of the same race. The outermost and greatest circle, which encloses all the circles, is that of the entire human race. With these facts considered, it is the duty of a serious man concerning the proper treatment of each of these groups to draw together somehow the circles towards the center, and to be serious about constantly moving those from the enclosing circles towards the enclosed circles. For the remoteness of blood relationship being quite large will detract somewhat from one's goodwill, but still, we must be serious about the task of equating them, for it would be a reasonable accomplishment if through our treatment of them we reduce the distance of our relationship to each kind of person. Again, it is held by the Stoics to be important to understand that nature creates in parents an affection for their children. And parental affection is the source to which we trace the origin of the association of the human race in communities. This cannot but be clear in the first place from the conformation of the body and its members, which by themselves are enough to show that nature's scheme included the procreation of offspring. Yet it could not be consistent that nature should at once intend offspring to be born and make no provision for that offspring when born to be loved and cherished. Even in the lower animals, nature's operation can be clearly discerned when we observe the labor that they spend on bearing and rearing their young. We seem to be listening to the actual voice of nature. Hence, as it is manifest that it is natural for us to shrink from pain, so it is clear that we derive from nature herself the impulse to love those to whom we have given birth. From this impulse is developed the sense of mutual attraction which unites human beings as such. This also is bestowed by nature. The mere fact of their common humanity requires that one man should feel another man to be akin to him. I think that was all I was going to say to start off with. Are you telephoning me? You're telephoning me?
Sir, I am. I am, sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yes.
I'll now invite Dean Sudarshan to begin the discussion. Dean, can you hear us?
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah.
The first question that comes up is a word that we often hear these days from Mr. Narendra Modi, which is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that the world is our family. So I wondered if Sir Richard can trace some connections between these ideas about the world being one's family with what he described as the exposition of the Greek philosopher.
What was the connection?
In Sanskrit and in India, we often hear nowadays Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Vasudhaiva meaning the earth and all its inhabitants, and Kutumbam is family.
I'm sorry, I'm still finding it difficult to hear the question.
Can you repeat that, Ankit?
Sir, Dean Sudarshan is asking you about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which is the reference Kutumbakam, which is the reference to the entire world as our family. And how does that reconcile with the notions which you've discussed in your presentation?
Whose idea are you referring to when you speak of the world as a family?
This is in the, I think it is in the Upanishads.
In the Upanishads?
Yeah.
I see. That's very interesting. I did not know that. So that does sound like the widest circle, which the Stoics are describing. They speak of the human race as the widest circle. So it looks as if the Upanishads are in agreement about the widest circle. But I don't know whether the smaller circles, the mind, body, close family, further family, then the so-called deme, and then the tribe, and then the fellow citizens, and then the township, and then the race you belong to, and then the human race. I don't know whether all those are listed in the Upanishads, but one element that the world is family does seem to correspond. Yes. How interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. Naresh, you've got some comments?
Yes, indeed. I'm wondering how we do this. I don't know whether Sir Richard can hear.
Again, I'm not hearing, I'm afraid.
Okay, so we'll have to ask Ankit if he's hearing.
Yes, I can.
To be an interlocutor. So the question is, it seems that what the Greek Stoics, the piece presented by Sir Richard, was more a kind of a sociological analysis, a statement of the interrelationships of the individual to all of humanity, but it did not take into consideration metaphysical dimensions, such as, you know, the nature of the self, and I know he has also written about that, consciousness, and the Advaita Vedanta in the Upanishads as well speaks to a common consciousness shared by all of humanity. Now,
So I'm going to
that
request you
seems
to
to be
just
consistent with the Stoic description, but I would argue that the Stoic description is rather superficial in a way, in that it deals only with the sociological analysis. I wonder whether Sir Richard might want to comment on this.
So, Sir Richard, the question that's been posed to
Yes,
you
I
is,
didn't. I'm afraid I didn't hear that. Yes, but can you tell me?
so I was just about to. It's asking you about the interrelationship of humanity and the metaphysical stages which are posed in that relationship. And uh, Professor Singh, can you repeat the latter part of your question, please, briefly?
Yes. I am talking about the understanding, both coming from Advaita Vedanta, ancient traditional wisdom teaching, and now reinforced by quantum physics and modern cognitive neuroscience, that humans have a shared consciousness.
Right.
So the point is then that the relationship articulated by the Stoics is more sociological in nature, but does not go to a deep metaphysical understanding of the relationship of, individual mind to family, to village, to tribe, and to all of humanity. So
Right.
I am asking the question whether, Sir Richard would agree that the Stoic description is relatively superficial compared to the deeper metaphysical understanding.
Right. So, Sir Richard Srabji, the question is speaking to you, or is inquiring about the relationship of society and the metaphysical state between the between the Stoics and the description that they give of their particular philosophy and the understanding that they have, the agreement vis-a-vis the Advaita Vedanta, which is also referenced in the question by Professor Singh. Is that an accurate description, Professor Singh? Or
no? You've got to. The question really is there a common consciousness that all of humanity has? It means a kind of a total empathy that the consciousness is capable of. That's the question. I mean, is it simply that, you start with a small circle and you widen your affections to a larger circle? That's one, that's been described. But the question here is there a common consciousness at a metaphysical level? The key word here is consciousness. Is there a common consciousness in all of humanity, or if you think about it, in everything that's on earth?
Is the question whether there is a common consciousness
Yes.
among humans? Yes, I see. I don't think it's said that there is a common consciousness among humans. It's rather that there's a duty on each human, but this duty may not be fulfilled, but there's a duty to think about other humans. Only some humans will perform their duty. But if you perform this duty, then you will be conscious of circles of humans further and further out away from you. But it doesn't happen naturally. It doesn't happen easily. It's something which Stoics, in particular, are urged to work on. So I think that there's no. It's not this consciousness of others isn't naturally so widespreading to the whole of the human race. Is that addressing your question?
Yes, in part, but I think no, we wanted to connect the Stoic ideas with work that's done on, say, in science with neurologists and so on, who talk about something that naturally triggers an affection to fellow human beings. That is, are there any neurons in the brain that kind of create empathy and fellow feeling that's in a way natural?
I only heard a little part of that. You were talking about the brain and whether it was naturally able to
empathize with other people.
Be conscious of many circles of people?
Yes, that's a kind of fellow feeling. Is that natural? Would the Stoics say it's natural, or should you cultivate it?
I think the Stoics thought it would be natural in a certain restricted sense. It would be in accordance with nature, but not natural in the sense of easy or something that nature enables you to do just like that. It's a very, very difficult thing to do. It requires a great deal of thought and practice. So it doesn't come naturally. It's not natural in the sense of coming naturally. It's in the sense of being in accordance with nature if you can manage to do this difficult thing.
Right. Okay, Sudeep, you have a question? Sudeep, you have to unmute.
Can you say that again?
No, I'm inviting another participant to ask a question.
Yeah. I can now. Yes, I think that's a very interesting take. I think that what Naresh was also trying to mention, and also from our center's perspective where we are working. So from the science as well as sociology perspective, to my mind, 2 points comes in which I'd like to know from Sir Richard. One is that there can be two perspectives of consciousness. One is like the fundamental consciousness, which is, where, say, neuroscience comes in, where quantum physics also nowadays comes in, and myself working a bit in that area. So many, say, a few days back, I was working with a neuroscientist who also thinks that memory fundamentally can be non-local. So if memory is non-local, so that's kind of like a common sharing thing about memory, which goes beyond physical space-time. On the other hand, there is this phenomenal consciousness, which is more into the sociological domain. So I'd really like to understand from Sir Richard that going back to Stoic philosophy, that how they would relate to both these dimensions of consciousness. One is the fundamental consciousness, and the other one is more social perspective of phenomenal consciousness.
I'm sorry that the sound is so bad for at the reception end here. Can somebody summarize that for me?
Ankit, you're on the phone.
So can you hear me?
Let's try without the phone. I'll try without the phone.
Can you hear us? Can you hear us, sir? Hello?
He can't.
Can you hear us? Can you hear me now?
Yes, only with the phone. Yes, with the phone.
Right. I'm just going to request everybody to just please share the questions in the chat box, because it's just very difficult to summarize these long-winded questions. While Professor Sudeep does that, there's a question in the chat box which speaks about the it says, Sir Richard Surabji, does the following capitalist system of development with the top to bottom trickle down sit well with the Stoic thinking?
Does the capitalist system fit well with the Stoic system? I don't think capitalism fits very well. The capitalist system encourages those who are successful at capitalistic affairs to make a profit. It's not concerned with relating to everybody in your society at all, is it? The capitalist system favoritizes, doesn't it? Whereas the system we're discussing, of the Stoic Oichiosis, is not a system of favoritization.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to read out two questions which had come in the chat box. The first is the question which was shared earlier. Now it's written down. It's asking about the two perspectives of consciousness. First is the fundamental and the phenomenal. While there might be a shared fundamental consciousness, the phenomenal might be more in the line of the Stoic philosophy. The second question is, how can we differentiate between innate and mental constructs to get a notion qualify as naturally occurring?
Give me the first one again, please.
The first one is asking about the two perspectives of consciousness. First is the fundamental and the phenomenal. While there might be a shared fundamental consciousness, the phenomenal might be more in line with the Stoic philosophy. So I suppose as a question, the second one is asking about the differentiating factor between the innate and the mental construct to get a notion to qualify as quote unquote naturally occurring.
On the first question, asks about a fundamental consciousness as opposed to a phenomenal consciousness. I'm not seeing that recognized by the Stoics, I'm sorry to say. Did you think this might be possibly what the Stoics were getting at?
Professor Sleep, can I at least get a nod? Or it's not possible if I.
Yeah, I think. What about the second question?
So Richard, what about the second question, which is asking about the difference between the innate and the mental constructs to get a notion qualify as naturally occurring?
Now, what did I say about naturally occurring? Would you just remind me, what did I say about naturally occurring?
All right, well, let's the questionnaire pose that in the chat box, so that we can return to the question. But in the interim, I'll just move to the next question, which is by Professor Stephen Marks. He's asking you about the Prime Minister's initiative of the Mission Life movement, which is the lifestyle for the environment, to be an India-led global mass movement that will indulge individual and collective action to protect and preserve the environment, because climate change goes beyond only policy making, and people themselves are finding that they should contribute as an individual, families, and as community to the environment. This mission life unites the people of the earth as pro-planet. Is this official government policy a reflection of the topic of this talk?
Thank you for that. Thank you for that question. I can see. I can see a relationship with the topic of this talk. The Stoic text I was talking about finishes by saying, "The mere fact of their common humanity requires that one man should feel another man to be akin to him." And this does relate to the need for protecting our environment, which the speaker was asking about, and the relationship between the individual and community. There is something in common there, certainly. It fits particularly with this sentence translated from the Greek: "The mere fact of their common humanity requires that one man should feel another man to be akin to him." There's no reference to the environment there, of course, but there is a movement connecting the individual with the entire community. I don't think, however, the other element is present in Stoicism. I don't think there was a discussion in the Stoics of protecting the environment. I don't think that had been raised in the Stoic mind.
Thank you. There's another question in the chat box. It says, asking you, the Stoics sought harmony in society by seeking to strengthen relationships among different levels of society, from individual to world. While that is commendable, it will be made much more effective by an understanding of why humans feel alienated from each other and from nature. We have such an understanding now from science and spirituality. Did the Stoics understand the source of alienation of human to human and human to nature?
Thank you for that question. The Stoics were very interested in the alienation of human from human, but I'm not sure they discussed the alienation between humans and nature. I suppose that life in ancient Greece was inevitably much closer to nature. There weren't all the inventions which allow us to live separately from nature.
I'm going to read out another question, and this one starts with understanding the Stoicism is in the present scenario integrated into elements from other existing schools of thoughts like skepticism, which took elements from post-Aristotle and then Descartes with time, or is this in pristine form? Also, what was the level of practice of the ideas of Stoicism among Greeks in the era?
Give me the first question again, please.
It's asking Stoicism in the present scenario has integrated elements from other existing schools of thoughts like skepticism, which took elements from the post-Aristotle and then Descartes era with time, or has this evolved over a certain period? And what is the level of practice of the idea of Stoicism among Greeks in the era in which it was most fashionable?
I'll just write those down. Now, would you say the first one once again, though, please? What was the first one?
The first one is Stoicism is in the present scenario or the present environment has integrated elements from other schools of thoughts, and there is a reference made to the post-Aristotle era. And so it's basically asking you about what are the elements, what are the key elements of Stoicism, and is it influenced, is it borrowing from other schools of thoughts, which are at least mentioned over here, reference to Descartes and the post-Aristotle era as well. So what are the key elements and how are they influenced in the present scenario, present environment in which we live in as well?
Well, the Stoics certainly were very conscious of their predecessors. They were very conscious of Aristotle, who came before them. Of course, they knew about Plato. But I'm not sure that this theory, or this particular theory of theirs, oichiosis, extending affinity, the process of extending affinity to wider and wider circles, I'm not sure that they were drawing on their predecessors in suggesting that. I think that was rather original with them. Is that answering the question?
Yes, and can you also, the second part of the question was asking about the practice of Stoicism amongst the Greeks, and how was that relevant or prevalent to them?
Well, the Greeks felt completely free to choose which philosophy they would follow, if they were going to choose a philosophy at all. Of course, choosing a philosophy is something for intellectuals, isn't it? The non-intellectual would need to be taught by an intellectual if he or she was going to adopt one philosophy rather than another. Sorry, would you just repeat the question again?
Well, I think we've got a few questions, so I'll just move on to
Okay.
Dean Sudarshan's questions. He's asking, for the benefit of all of us, how do you think Stoicism can help us cope with our mental anxieties, insecurities, grief, and confusion? Is Stoicism related to the Bhagavad view that detachment, doing one's duty without worrying about the results or consequences in any way? Is there a relation between these two perspectives?
I don't think that Stoicism is talking about detachment, because this theory of oichiosis is really a theory of attachment, isn't it? In a way, it's the opposite of detachment. You're being encouraged to see everybody as connected with you in circles surrounding you. So it's not a philosophy of detachment at all. I suppose there were Greek philosophers like the skeptics who said, well, one can't know anything to be true. And that might, if you were a skeptic, cause you to be slightly more detached. But I think the Stoics are aiming at the opposite. They want you to be immersed in society and to be considering all these circles around you.
Thank you. There's one more question which is posed, and we'll assess after that. This is asking about, do you think that the methodological individualism as the main way to analyze human behavior for the last 3 centuries has condensed all the circles into one circle? So are we one big
just
family?
writing that down. I think that individualism, in one sense of the word, is in danger of ignoring the circles around one. It's not recognizing, oh, look, there are all these circles, and I'm going to condense them into one. I think the individualist may be failing to recognize all these circles that the Stoics are talking about surrounding you. There's a danger in individualism of ignoring the other circles, I think.
I don't see any further questions in the chat box, but if I could oh, well, there we are. We've got another one. This is another one from Professor Marx. He's asking you another approach to understanding how individuals empathizing with other humans, the concept of eusociality in the evolutionary biology, building on Edward Wilson's entomology and social biology. He argues that humans naturally defend self and family, but also cooperate with community and humanity because there is an advantage in natural selection to do so. Does this provide a scientific basis for oichiosis?
That sounds very much in keeping with Stoicism, social biology. It involves the idea that there's a biological drive towards a cooperation, if I've understood that rightly. And so far, I think the Stoics would agree with that there is a natural biology directing one in the direction of cooperation. That's an interesting question. Thank you.
Well, following up from that, we've got a question from Dean Sudarshan, who's asking about the relationship between human rights and deities towards one another. And perhaps if I could just add to that, the Universal Declaration on Human Rights and other international human rights instruments, which are in some sense horizontal vis-a-vis one another, it sort of breaks the binaries which are created in the Oichiosis philosophy. How do the Greeks and the Stoics reconcile with that perspective? Because in that
how do the Greeks reconcile
with the universality and the horizontality of human rights and the duties vis-a-vis one another? Because that sheds the boundaries that exist between one another, and to look at one another just as an equal part or an equal member of life.
Yes. Well, I think the Stoics are talking about duties to each other, but I'm not so sure that they're talking about rights in the they're not saying it's because the others have rights that you have duties to each other. They're not adding that bit about rights, I think. Maybe we would naturally immediately think, well, it follows if there are duties, then there are corresponding rights. Well, that's perfectly true, but I don't think that rights was in the minds of these Stoics. I think they were just concentrating on duties without thinking particularly about the relationship between the duties and the rights. Is that addressing the question, or is that missing the question?
That's satisfactory. I can see Dean Sudarshan nodding his head.
Yes, I think, yeah. So so human rights is a very
Just a minute, sir.
Recent idea.
Yes, please. Please proceed, sir.
No. So I don't think there's even a word for rights in Greek. Is there?
Is there a
word for rights in Greek? It's not there in Sanskrit.
Is there a word for rights in Greek?
Well, it's perfectly easy in Greek to express the idea of rights in a slightly more roundabout way. I don't know that there's just a single word, but you could take the idea of being owed, what you are owed. There's a Greek word for to owe something to somebody, and it would be very easy for a Greek to talk about what I am owed by other people. That would be entirely equivalent to the idea of rights. I'm not sure that they had a single word that just exactly meant rights, but a phrase like what is owed to me would express the idea of my rights. So it was perfectly easy for Greeks to express that idea.
Okay. Professor, final push, or would you like to close now? Would you like one more question, perhaps, or
yes, certainly. I can take another question. Yes.
Okay, I'm just going to skim through these and perhaps see if there are any that we might have perhaps missed. And I do see one. This is posed by Professor Singh, who's asking that Stoics sought harmony in society by seeking to strengthen relationships between different levels of society, from individual to the entire world.
Mhm.
While that is commendable, it is made for much more effective understanding of humans by alienation of these humans from nature. Now we have an understanding of this in science and spirituality. We're in fact returning to this question. Did the Stoics understand the source of alienations of humans to humans and humans to nature as well? And in fact, this is you can sense this in international environment law as well. It speaks about humans' relations vis-a-vis the environment, but nothing in reference to the individual vis-a-vis the environment.
I think that it was more unlikely in the ancient world that there would be a problem about alienation from nature, because the ancient world was not as protected from nature as we are. Modern life has protected us from storms and floods and all this sort of thing. There weren't these protections from nature available. So I think that in those long ago days, it was much harder to be alienated from nature. Of course, if you lived in a city, that was rather different from living in the country. But even for those living in the city, I think alienation from nature was a much more unlikely thing to happen. They hadn't got all the protections that we have.
Right. Dean Sudarshan, do you have any final?
I think thank you very much, Ankit, for facilitating this dialogue. I just request Vice Dean Naresh Singh to thank Sir Richard Sorabji. We do not have a department of philosophy in our university, and I hope Sir Richard's very lucid, clear exposition of what the Stoics thought would kindle an interest in philosophy, and students would think much more about what they owe to others than to ask what is owed unto them. So if that spark is kindled, we'd have achieved something very useful this afternoon. Over to you, Naresh.
Yes,
Thank you. Thank you.
So Richard, what a delight to listen to you. I'm assuming you are not hearing me quite clearly, are you?
I'm finding it a little difficult to hear, but do go ahead.
Okay, and maybe we'll get a quick summary from Ankit if necessary. But I was just saying what a delight it was to listen to you from someone who has spent a lifetime in these lofty philosophical ideas of the world, and especially in Greek philosophy, having written so many books, so many treatises on the subject. It was a real pleasure for us to be able to listen directly from you and to have the opportunity to engage as well. right now in our school, we have just developed a new course called Unity of Knowledge Beyond Disciplinary Silos, which treats as well with the philosophy of science. And it goes back and starts with the ancient Greeks, but then we come to this question I had posed to you that deals with alienation. You know, the alienation that that occurred, I guess, with the advent of the powerful science of Newton, Descartes, and Bacon 400 years ago. And now we have what might be called this sense of confusion in the world, where we have a lot of trouble deciding how to measure progress, for example. I would imagine the Greeks would have thought that if you encountered or were able to increase the level of harmony in, you know, from the individual, like you were saying, to the family, to the community, onto the nation state, and onto the world, that would have been the true measure of progress. Now we are pretty confused, I think, as a human species as to whether this needs to be measured by GDP per capita increases, or technological advance, or happiness, or harmony, or peace, and the list goes on. I say all of that because, you know, going back to some of these studies from the Stoics, one can learn so much still. So I just wanted to say that your lecture today, even though it dealt with an era long past, it was as alive and relevant today as could have been. I just want to thank you so much on behalf of our school, the Jindal School of Government and Public Policy, but also our university, the Jindal Global University, our dean who is here with us, our vice chancellor, and all our faculty and colleagues. I want to add a special word of thanks for our alumni, Ankit Malhotra, who was kind enough to put this together. And indeed, he celebrates the moment, as he mentioned, of meeting with you. The meal must have been good, but the food for thought might have been even better. So thanks again, Sir Richard, and thanks, Ankit.
It's been a great pleasure. Thank you for asking me, and I very much enjoyed talking with you.
Bye-bye now.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. It was an honor and a privilege. And we must meet again and discuss what else can we do together, because this was extremely
good,
engaging and thought-provoking. Thank you so much, sir.
Good.
Thank
Good.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Goodbye.
professors. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I mean, this is the first time I think we managed to have a Zoom